Okay, I'm doing a recording now of drawing a white surface. Hopefully the sound will record. I've sketched in these two eggs and part of a white box using red pencil. And okay, so the thing about white is there are a lot of colors in white, and you would be using red, blue, and yellow to create your tones, just the same way you use red, blue, and yellow for everything else. And what you have to do is kind of unfocus your eyes and look for highlights, shadow shapes, just the same as you did with the apple, just the same as you did with the trees. It's the same exact process. I'm blocking in some of the cast shadow very lightly, just so I have an idea of where things are. You can see that I'm putting it in with red, and now I'm going to switch, put in a bit of blue. A lot more of the paper will be left white because we're doing a white surface, but there's still quite a bit of color that should be in this drawing if it's going to become an interesting drawing. Okay, so don't be afraid of using color. You just have to be selective about it. And as you can see, I hold my pencil at a slant, and I keep my hand back on the pencil, and that enables me to sketch very quickly and loosely, so I have control. Remember what I said about being relaxed and being in control. That's the key, is if you're relaxed, you're in control. And very often people who are relaxed are in control. They're calm, and they're not worried about things. Okay, so right now it's a little bit too blue. I'm adding some yellow to kind of tone things down a bit. I want to neutralize some of the color. I don't really want it to be colorful, but I don't want it to be gray either. It might have a bit of color, a bit of tone. But it's starting to look more three-dimensional, right? It takes time. You have to be patient. You build things up slowly. The key is to not overwork anything. If you work too long in one area, that can really kill something. So you just do a little bit here and there. Just noticing where is it a little bit darker. And you just start to build up some of the areas. Right? You don't want it to be too colorful. And then also there's the shadow. Excuse me. Now I'm doing the shadow that's underneath. And there's a transparency, which is always interesting. Shadows are always interesting. They add a lot of personality to a drawing. I'm making this shadow a little bit darker. Okay, it's starting to look three-dimensional, right? And then this one has another shadow. This one's behind. You can't be afraid of the color, but if you put it in lightly and evenly, you retain control. Just very light layers. It's like working with watercolor. It's very similar. layers, very, very light layers. And you're basically you're building up gray tones by doing that. As you can see here. Then I'm adding. I'm coming back in with the red. I haven't been using red for a while. I started out with the red. Coming back in with the red. The red adds warm light, and it adds a kind of personality to the color. Actually, it's like reflected light in some areas. There's something magical about red. It's a nice color to bring into the drawing. Remember, we're not trying to aim for total realism here. We want something beautiful, but we want it to be believable. We want it to look round. If we want it to look round, we have to study it carefully. So the thing about white surfaces is that the color of the shadows is very interesting, and it can vary quite a bit. Depends on the light. Sometimes the light makes the shadows blue, sometimes it can make it purple. Just depends. It seems like it's a little bit pinkish even. Now the shadow seems like it's too colorful, and maybe the egg now seems like it's too red, right? Doesn't it feel like it's too red? We don't really want it to be red. We want it to feel like it's round. You have to get the shape of the modeling. It's the modeling. The tone is modeled. It's not a cast shadow. It's tone that's on the egg itself, on the form, that makes it look three-dimensional. Light hits one part of it, and the side that does not have light is in shadow, and that's what makes it look so three-dimensional. So that's what I'm trying to build up here. There are low lights, and then there are highlights. And you gradually build those up. You can get very, very specific if you have the patience to do it. I'm not sure I do, but I can show you some of this. What we don't want is for it to look flat. We want it to look rounded. We want it to look reflective. And the shadows. I'm adding some color again. There's always a part of the shadow that has light too, like a sort of reflected section where the light is bouncing. This part of the shadow seems quite dark, doesn't it? Now I have to come back in with the red. You want to get that transparency because it's so interesting, the way light falls. And you really need all three colors. You can't just work with red and blue, or just blue. Sometimes people think, oh, shadow, all I need is blue. No, you don't. You need all three hues. If you really want the color to work, you need all three. So now I'm coming back in with the yellow. I haven't visited with the yellow in a while, and I'm developing it. And some of the color will get neutralized by adding the yellow. It won't feel quite as blue, I don't think. It might even seem a little brown in some places. We'll see. It's challenging. Trying to make something look like it's got dimension just using pencil, right? And color. I'm trying to create tone, shadow, light. Now I've been working for about 10 minutes. You might not want to watch this for much longer, but I'll see how much I can get done in the next 2 or 3 minutes. Won't make it so long. Just enough for you to see where it can go. Now I feel like this shadow needs work. It's not laying flat, and actually there's another shadow right here, which I have to put in. That was underneath. You can't see the eggs, they're out of frame, but there's another very nice transparent shadow that really needs to be in the picture. So here we go. Even if it confuses things a little bit, it adds something to the picture. And where it overlaps, it gets much darker, the two grays of the two shadows on top of each other. See that? Okay. You can actually get a pretty nice gray and just build things up. You all know how to mix gray. You've done that. And on this side I need to do that too. But if you notice, my pencils are bright colors. I don't work with very dark blues because I feel that they get very muddy. And I would rather work with a light tone and darken it using red than work with a very dark blue, because the dark blue sometimes can make things get very dull very quickly. And I prefer to have things be more luminous. Now this still feels too, if you will, colorful to me. I feel like it's just kind of multicolored. It needs to be toned down. And I have drawn something in the background. There's a box behind it, a white box, which I haven't even gotten to yet. And I should have been working on that. You really should work the whole drawing at the same time. I've been going back and forth with the two eggs, but I haven't really touched the box. And I think I need to touch that too. So I think I'm going to do that. That's starting to get there. The shadows are a little on the red side though, right? Too red. I have to tone that down, I think. Maybe too purple. Okay, let's see what we can do with this box. We can just stroke it in. It doesn't have to be completely finished because it's background, but we don't want it to just be a line drawing either, right? It's back there. It's part of the composition. It shouldn't take over. It helps fill in the space. It's a white object, so I'm filling it in. And there was some shadow underneath it too. So let me put in some of that. Let me see if I can try to integrate it. That's the key, is how do you integrate everything into the composition, because it doesn't really work. If one thing looks good and everything else doesn't, then you don't really have a picture, do you? It doesn't matter if you did one thing well, like, oh, I did a great leaf, you know, I did a great face. You want the whole thing to work, everything. So you can't wait too long. You really have to work the whole composition. And this is not good, what I did. I should have done this earlier, but I'm catching myself up now by doing this. And I can try to balance some of the tone so that it fits in with the rest of the drawing. Let's see if I can do that. I don't want it to be too dark, that's why I'm keeping it light. I want it to recede. And I want it, it's not so much that it has to register as a box, it's really part of the composition. I just want it to be there. I want it to look good. It's surface, it's a surface area, and I want it to show as something behind the eggs that takes up some of the space. Okay, does that make sense to everyone? Let me see. Now that's too, it feels too blue and red. I have to put in some yellow to even it out, just to make it more neutral. It's going to go a little brown, and this is going to go a little green, which is fine. I will neutralize that. The top of it is really pretty pale, but I'm going to color it a bit. And okay, let me just add some more color here. The challenge here is using color as value. You're trying to create tones, you're trying to create basically grays, but you want them to be color at the same time, and it's a big challenge. But really, the world is full of color, so that's what we have to do. We have to make it work. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, that little opening in the box. I'm darkening it. Blue is the darkest of the three hues that I'm using, so I'm almost letting it stand for black. When I need a black, I can come back in, and the box has the kind of opening on the edge, so I go in and I can darken a few things if I feel like it, so that it feels as if there's a crease in there and there's some opening. I can get the back of the box. That's this edge. And underneath, you just have to be careful with your line though. Remember what I said. If you make a line too even, it looks like a coloring book. We're not doing coloring book. Lines in observation are really edges, crevices, cracks, openings. So notice how uneven my line is, because it's really not a line, it's an edge, it's an opening. You have to think about what you're doing when you do a line, right? Okay. This isn't finished. I could work on this for a lot longer before I get it right. This is just a beginning, but it's a start, and it shows you how to build a white composition. And it takes time, and it takes patience. I'm working almost 20 minutes, and well, it could take another 15 minutes really to get this done right. Sometimes if you work too long, that's not good either. Just depends. But I wanted to show you how to start it. And sometimes the fine point, I sharpen these very sharp. Sometimes the fine edge is a nice thing to come in with, to just kind of crisply go over the edge. Not of the whole thing, just part of it, to make it feel like there's a real edge there. You can't go over the whole edge, because then you'll flatten out everything. One side is always in the light, and you just have to make sure you remember that. And don't go over the whole thing. Okay? So I don't know if this is enough. Like I said, I could probably keep working on this for quite a while, but no, I don't want to totally bore you. I can stop. You get the idea, right? Okay.